So let's talk a little bit about immune system basics, okay? And again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put your comments in the chat, and then questions, address it as a question. So the immune system is working all day, every day. It doesn't just kick into gear when we are in cold and flu season. So it's a constant battle. You think about what we're being exposed to on a regular basis. We're not consciously aware of it, but we unconsciously, like, we have a lot of things happening. So we basically have these three lines of defense. And the first one is what is known as non-specific resistance barriers. The second one is non-specific innate immunity. And then, and that's like your patrol cars that are just always there, always present, always moving around looking for things. And then you have this adaptive immunity that is really in response to something, and it builds a memory for it so that the next time that thing comes in, it can do something about it. I think this is fascinating stuff, by the way. Chandler, what is that a picture from? What movie? If you answer correctly, I'm going to give you something. I don't know what. I'll give you a bottle of essential oil. It's too easy, though. Yes, airplane. All right, so resistance barriers, okay? So things like our skin. Think about, this is all part of the immune system. Our skin, our sweat, our mucous membranes, our mucus, the hair that lines our nasal passage and our lungs and all of our breathing passageways, saliva, tears, the epiglottis. Anybody know what that is? That little flap. The little flap that goes down into the rest of our system. Right. And then, so this is interesting too. So the skin, we secrete, like, obviously we excrete a lot of waste products from our sweat, but we also have this thing in our sweat called sebum. And it is at a very low pH or an acidic pH, and it's meant to neutralize pathogens. So just the surface of our skin has its own defense mechanism. If some of you have used my whiff before, it's got a little bit of baking soda in it, which is very alkaline. And that's why some people have an irritation to some baking soda on the skin, because the skin is meant to be somewhat acidic, and it's meant to neutralize pathogens. Lysozyme, which is in perspiration, tears, saliva, nasal secretions, tissues, and fluids, also is something that helps to break down proteins. And then we have our gastric juice, okay? So the stuff in our stomach, we're meant to have a really strong acidity in our upper GI or stomach. And remember, a lot of times this is one of our first interfaces with the outside environment. So when I'm eating food, I'm also eating pathogens and parasites and things that cause us harm. And so if I have a really strong acidity, then I'm breaking those pathogens down before they can do any harm to me. All right. Pepsin is a protein digesting enzyme that is only activated in the presence of strong acidity. And so, and this is all happening automatically. The digestion you can work on improving. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Also part of the resistance barriers is the expulsion of invaders. So the coughing, sneezing, those are things that are, like, from an evolutionary standpoint, we're trying to get rid of something, right? There's a purpose behind that. When we actually use the bathroom, we're getting rid of different waste products. And then also vomiting, obviously, is a way of getting rid of pathogens. It's actually something that it's not pleasurable when you get food poisoning, but there's a purpose behind getting sick and throwing up. You're trying to expulse these things. Tears and saliva, same thing. If you get like a really watery eyes, in allergy season, or you come down with some kind of a sickness, the purpose of those things is to get these invaders out of the system. Now we have the non-specific innate immunity. Think about these things as they don't really have a memory, but they're always patrolling the body. And we may have heard of some of these things like natural killer cells, phagocytes. Some of these peptides are, again, protein digesting enzymes and peptides. Inflammation, acute inflammation is really a good thing because it isolates the area. It allows a lot of fluid and nutrients to go in and then push the bad things out. Fever is actually designed to be a good thing whenever I can. And I'm not making a recommendation here. You got to do what you feel like is safe. When I can, when I get sick, I try to tough it out. I try not to take ibuprofen or anything unless it's like a screaming high fever that, looks like, actually, there was a time I probably almost died, and I remember just toughing it out, and I made it through it. So there's probably a limit there. Here I think a safe range, if you have a fever of 100 or less, that's something you could probably tough out. But again, you have to do what's comfortable for you. If you get above 100 degrees, maybe it's something you want to make sure that someone's aware of what's happening. But a fever, if you think about it, it's increasing the temperature of the body, which will kill a lot of pathogens. That's the purpose of a fever. And then we have acquired immunity. Now, so we have resistance barriers that are always in place, except for strong stomach acid. That's something we may need to work on. And then we have the innate immunity. It's like the patrol cars. They're just always there, patrolling, looking for bad guys. And then we have our adaptive acquired immunity, which is a memory-based immunity. And so what we do is we get rid of invaders and we prepare reserves or antibodies to deal with those invaders in the future. So this is our memory-based system. So sometimes some kind of a protein or pathogen comes into the system and we can remember that in the future and build up an antibody to it. That's the purpose behind some vaccines. So theoretically, when we get some kind of a sickness, we shouldn't get the identical one in the future, or at least not get hit as hard with it because we've already got antibodies prepared for it. Something important to understand is that the antigens that we encounter are protein-based, all right? So pathogens are protein-based. They're animal-based, and sometimes they are protein plant-based. So we get things like viruses from bacteria, undigested foods, certain drugs, pollen. Many plant-based proteins can contribute to this antigen, or the body will think it's an antigen and try to build a response to it. And I highlight some of the grain-based things here. We'll talk about that here in just a moment, because sometimes the body can confuse those things and try to mount an immune response, and you start to suffer from it, and it's kind of an unnecessary suffering. So I think that's just interesting information. It's not anything that we necessarily need to remember, except maybe when you're in the middle of being sick, just realizing this is part of my immune system, and it's a good thing for me to have a fever and to be coughing and sneezing and having a runny nose, and although it's very inconvenient and there's some bit of suffering that goes along with it, it's fascinating that the body has these different mechanisms to deal with being sick and these invaders. So some things to take away: every immune system is nutrient-based, right? Everything that happens inside the body is nutrient-based. That means that we always have to focus on eating for nutrients. And that's the most important thing when it comes to eating real food in the first place. It is giving the body what it needs to contribute to function, structure, and form. And part of that's the immune system. We need proper mineralized hydration. So a lot of stuff that we just talked about is fluid-based, all right? So we need to be hydrated on a regular basis, especially during this relatively, dangerous season. Although for the past year we've been in a dangerous season, but a lot of this stuff is fluid-based, so we need proper hydration on a regular basis. Usually the recommendation is about half your body weight in ounces, up to 100 ounces. And then we love the idea of mineralizing your water to make it more usable and absorbable. So very, very important during this time of year. And then we also have to prioritize removing the stressors that cause the body harm, that aggravate the immune system and that aggravate the digestive system, because this will lessen the potential or the likelihood of something happening to us. All right.